Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Richard Lewis Show. I'm Richard Lewis, the man pressing the buttons and playing the non-copyrighted 1920s music is Sam Davis, soon to be a commentator.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about this, have we?
No, I don't think I can't say where it is, but I'm sure we can just say that out, yeah. I'm going to be casting some CS soon.
Yeah, so people are complaining I'm out of sync already, apparently. So
Fantastic. Yeah, that's just faded back out.
Yep, no problem. Guess we'll fix that in a bit. Or maybe not. I'll let you fiddle and press the buttons. But yeah,
the other thing is, when I fix the sync, it restarts the stream. So everyone goes, wait, the stream's down, wait.
Is it? Do you want to try and do it anyway, or do you think it'll catch up and fix it?
No, it won't catch up. All right. I think it's a pipe dream.
All right. Well, yeah. Sam's going to be doing some commentary in Counter-Strike. He's going to make his debut, but we're going to do some practice casts on this channel, I think, first. So there's that. So yeah, just let me know when you're about to press the button.
Yeah. Right. Should we take a? Should we take a little break? But nah. Right. The thing is, I'm gonna have to guesstimate, right? Talk. Let's have like we were doing before the show, right? Have a talk. This is what we were doing before the show, trying to fix this, and it's just come back.
I'm having a talk. I'm having a talk. I don't think we need to do that, but yeah, I could just talk about some stuff.
All right.
So yeah,
I'm gonna guesstimate. That's a 200 millisecond delay. All right, I'm applying it now.
Applied. Applied. We'll see how that works out then. 200 milliseconds is 2 seconds.
Nah, I don't think it is, because the old one I used to apply was 600 milliseconds when it used to be really far
so it is 1,000 milliseconds
I
a
have
second.
no idea, man.
Yeah, it must be. Milli. Yeah. Milli.
A milli. Right, how are we looking? Have a talk.
Right, I'm having a talk, mate. We could have done this. I don't know. I like the fact we do this on stream. It's like one of your favorite musicians tuning a guitar on stage and talking to the audience. Like, bow, 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 bow.
People saying it's better, mate. Look at that. Straight with the eye. I can just narrow that millisecond in, mate.
Bow. There we go. So we're in the drop D tune.
And for my next trick, I'm going to fix that subscriber count, because we actually have some shirt giveaways to do now, mate.
Oh, shit, have we?
Yeah, we got 351 subs. So
wow,
that's two we got to give away.
That's 2 t-shirts we got to give away.
So
yeah, you better update that shit. It's all right. It's fixed. Should we do the t-shirt giveaway first then?
Yeah, we can do. All right.
Yeah, let's just get that out of the way, because I want to talk about some serious shit today.
All right.
So
Right. Anyone can win, and we're gonna add. Should we do subscriber luck? Remember that? So subs have more odds.
Yeah. Subscriber luck. Let's do subscriber luck. I think it's only fair, right?
Alright, so we're gonna do. I won't do 10 times sub luck. We'll do 5 times sub luck. You're 5 times more likely to win if you're a sub. So everyone who wants to get in, type now. I'm gonna wait for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we'll let you jump in. Someone there, Tabaki says, I don't want the shirt unless you've worn them. I promise. Any shirt I send out, I will rub under my armpits. Yeah, when I've had a beefy day, I'll just be straight in there, like a window washer sponge, just soaking it up. There you go. So people are typing. Spin the wheel.
Hang on.
Make me rich.
Give you 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll. And the winner is X YOLO Swags XX. Who isn't a sub, actually, but he's had a win.
Never won anything in his life.
So there we go. Right, I just messaged you. Message me on Twitch, the private one. All right, and we're going to roll the next one.
All right.
And how do I roll another one? There we go. And roll again.
Spin the wheel.
And the next winner is Grot Bergman. And
nice,
he's not
big
a sub
fan.
either. So if you were a sub, unlucky, turns out it's worth nothing.
Subs got fucked in the face.
So there you go. Message
So
me your address and you had to send me your address and your passport number,
yeah,
and I'll send you a
address.
shirt, mate.
Yeah. Basically, just we've now sponsored by this Nigerian prince. So just send us your sort code, your bank account, your date of birth, very important, and your mother's maiden name, and we'll send you a T-shirt.
Like on a devil walk, what I just said means crying gay man in Swedish.
Not
So
bad.
there you go.
Solid username.
Glad I've given you a reason to cheer up. Hopefully, mate, have a shirt.
So yeah, enjoy those shirts. We'll send them out. Do they get to pick which ones they get, or do we just send?
Yeah, you can pick. Yeah, that's message me what shirt you want. So go to a store, tell me what shirt you want, what size, and your address, and there you go. Congratulations.
All right, good job. So look, let's start the show. Bit of a weird one actually, because I just got told that Sean Hughes, a stand-up comedian that I sort of grew up with in the 90s, you know, like not literally, but just obviously watching his stuff, you know, died. He just literally died, and he was only like 51. And I know, like, probably a lot of people don't know this about me, or wouldn't assume this about me. I didn't end up doing what I wanted to do with my life, like most of us don't, you know. Like, it's been okay. It's been pretty cool. I got to be on American TV, and you know, I've done some of the cool stuff, and you know, this is an all right living, you know, like it's pretty good. But what I really wanted to do, and what I tried to do, and what I wasn't very successful at doing, was being a stand-up comedian, you know, and I used to do that. And I sort of transitioned into doing like poetry and stuff on stage instead. And I tried to blend the two for a brief period of time with not much luck. But that's what I wanted to do. And like, obviously, like, stand-up comedy is like something that I've studied. It's something I'm mega interested in, the history of stand-up. Like, I've got a very good understanding of this. If you know me privately, it's like one thing that gives me like constant joy to talk about. And Sean Hughes has this kind of like weird place in British stand-up comedy in the sense that he was never really like a major breakout star. Like, what's interesting is like during the 90s, we had this sort of like new wave of stand-up comedy where it was like we'd moved away from some of the more like broad topics of the 80s. Like growing up in the 80s, you know, like, you know what it was, what stand-up comedy was like right then. It was like, you know, really broad humor. You know, you didn't get very political. You didn't really get bogged down with the minutiae. It was like, this is where you had the first wave of like what I would call true observation comedy as we know it. Like, you know, what's the deal with airline food? You know, like Jerry Seinfeld kind of perfected that a little bit later on. And, you know, just really sort of puerile humor was very popular in the 80s as well, especially in America, where it was like we had the birth of like shock jock almost stand-ups. You know, you think about like Sam Kinison and people like this, you know, they were all playing their trade in the 80s. But in the 90s in the UK, we had like this new wave of like 90s comedians. And the most famous of which was probably like Rob Newman and David Baddiel. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but they used to be a partnership before David Baddiel decided that he I mean, Rob Newman and David Baddiel didn't get along at all. And they used to sell like stadiums. Like, you can go and find Newman and Baddiel in pieces live at Wembley Stadium. They were like these huge stand-up comedians. And what they focused on primarily was like the minutiae, just the sort of everyday life that this generation of like 19-year-old, 20-somethings, the young people, the waifs and strays of London that had maybe traveled from other parts of the world trying to find fame and fortune and kind of dealing with reality that it isn't there. The streets weren't really paved with gold. The comedy spoke directly to that. And Sean Hughes was one of that generation. He was, you know, an Irish comedian that had come over and used to talk a lot about, you know, just recreational drugs. And he was never like belly laugh funny. Do you know what I mean? He was never like raucous, like make a crowd like, you know, like the annoying cunt in the back, you know. It was always like really subtle humor. Like, he could have just been like the funny friend in your social group down the pub, you know, telling you a few jokes over a glass of whiskey or a bottle of beer, and just really on point and really funny and really astute. And, you know, he, for example, like he did this bit, I remember, where he was talking about doing Scrabble on ecstasy. and saying how the game just takes on no meaning once you're on MDMA. You know, like why are we keeping score? You know, do you want some letters so you can make a better word? And people didn't really do a lot of recreational drug humor and stuff back then. And he was just like a subtly funny guy. And a lot of people know him because I think he was on like Nevermind the Buzzcocks for like 5-6 years.
Yeah.
As one of the captains. I think a lot of people know him from that. But where I know him from is he had a fucking he had his own sitcom on Channel 4. And it used to be called Sean's Show. And he'd wrote the theme tune, and it was deliberately shit. It was just him saying, "It's Shawnee's show," and it used to be on at like 10:30 at night or something. It used to be on super late, tucked away on Channel 4. I think back when people still turned TV off, in the 90s, like the TV turned off. Like you would watch it, you get the national anthem, and then it was just a clown doing fucking noughts and crosses by himself for like 8 hours till the breakfast TV came on. And I used to watch this show, and it was like it just had like loads of really funny ideas, like fucking, he would come home and he'd had a shit day out and a shit day at work, and he'd check his answer phone. Answer phones were brand new kind of bits of technology, like especially in the UK, it was almost considered a luxury or a decadence to have one. Instead of just writing a note and putting it to your fridge, and like he would always check his answer phone, and it would be messages from God. Like just left on his answer phone about how he had to get his life together and sort his shit out. It was just really fucking good stuff, well written. He was like a novelist as well. And it just fucking sucks, like 51's fucking nothing these days. And they haven't talked about the cause of death. There's all these obituaries and like eulogies and tributes and stuff coming out because this was just announced literally like 6 hours ago. But he went out like a good Irishman, I suppose, because apparently it was cirrhosis of the liver. It was, he drank. Yeah, that will do it. He didn't get 2 livers, unlike our other friends. So, yeah, just crazy, man. Like, he's just sad. He was just a cool guy. It just sucks. So, I'll probably pour one out for him. It's what he would want. Rest in peace, Sean Hughes. He was a good man, a good comic, a comics comic. So let's talk about I'll try and lighten the mood, a little bit of brevity. We'll do some funny stuff because it is going to get serious, and we're going to talk about some shit. This guy's had enough, Sam. Have you ever had enough?
Yeah.
You ever just had enough? You know what I mean? You ever just fucking had?
I'm not gonna do this anymore.
Yeah. Like just, I've been really pissed off in life in a few situations, but I've never just tapped the fuck out on life. I've never just looked at it all collectively: the job, the girlfriend, the children, the mortgage, and thought, you know what? I reject all of this. This is bullshit. Well, I saw this story in the fucking Daily Mail, dude. I love to troll the Daily Mail because it is just it's just a treasure trove of fake outrage and just nonsensical stories. This one fucking blew me away, dude. This is a story about a man aged 62 from Birmingham. So obviously my old stomping ground. Chap called Malcolm Applegate. And he got married to his wife. And they've been married 3 years. He got married, obviously, pretty late on, in his 50s or whatever. And he was so sick of her nagging him, so sick. Just one day, he just got up and hid in the woods for 10 years. He had enough.
He's gone full Grizzly Adams, living in the woods.
Just fucking, mate, just imagine it. Just imagine being so sick, right? And it's just the details of the story because it's like, okay, this motherfucker really had it up to here, like, because he said he decided he was going to go to London. So he went on his bike. He's an old man. He used to cycle, he's pretty active, was a gardener and whatnot.
He's retired, got no else to do, just has a bike.
Yeah. So he decided he was just going to cycle to London from Birmingham, but halfway down there, his bike got stolen. So And so at this point,
I'm pedaling away. That's my bike, you little rat. Please.
So at this point, surely you stop and think, right, this is a sign. My bike's been stolen. Like, nah, he walked on foot to London, mate. He was so sick of it.
Or you just get a train? Did he really leave with just no money?
I don't know, mate.
Just got up like, fuck all this. I ain't even taking possessions. I'm just out. You'd think he'd at least take £100 with him.
Yeah, it's mental. It's fucking mental. He just literally just fucking bailed, dude. Like he just kept on. It's like a full breakdown. See, look, just listen to these quotes, mate.
3-week journey, mate.
Yeah, I know.
3 weeks. It's fucking 3 hours on the train.
So look, right. He says here, I was married to her for 3 years, but it got too much. First of all, I met her in Eastbourne, and I married her in Birmingham. I don't know what that's got to do with anything. Like, for 3 years, it was all right. Like, how would you describe your marriage? It's all right, isn't it? You know.
Like I went from all right to get me the fuck out of civilization.
Listen to this, right? He goes, for 3 years, it was all right, and we got on with one another, and the gardening got too much for her. What mad extreme gardening is he doing? Like to drive
him in till like fucking 3 a.m. in the morning. Can you just go to bed? I gotta fucking trim this edge. Fuck off.
It's like, you know, like obviously I talked about in the past how like being a fucking journalist isn't like, it's not good for relationships, you know, because you stay up all night, you're having a drink, you're having a fucking, you know, a work, you're buried into shit, you keep strange hours, it's very all consuming. Gardening though, like, I don't know, you don't see any gritty gardener series on TV, do you? Like Applegate. Like, just like some hard, dedicated gardener. He's just there, like, nursing a drink. It's to him, gotta trim them bloody edges, haven't I? Oh, Malcolm, come on, come away. You've got to leave the case. You've got to stop it. You've got to put it down. I promised I'd get them edges done. It haunts me. You know, like, you're never going to see that, right?
See the weeds in between the paving. How can I sleep with weeds in the paving?
So he says the gardening got too much for her. And then he goes, she said,
like
why don't...
mob.
Yeah, I know, innit? She said, why don't we have more time together? And he said, how can I? I've been recommended to people. So I just upped and left. I got fed up with her because we used to get into so many arguments. It took me 3 weeks to get back to London. I didn't lock my bike up in Oxford and someone helped themselves to it, so I had to walk back, right? He secretly left his family home when increased working hours angered his wife, but the gardener has now told all after he emerged from hiding. After leaving, Malcolm camped in thick woodland near Kingston, southwest London, while working on a garden at a community centre for the elderly. And he was just out there camping, just living in a tent.
He says there were 3 of them.
I don't know.
How's he got friends in this tent?
Yeah. He just fucking... I hooked up with my old boys. Tenty and camper, you know. I said, how you doing, lads?
Top boys welcome me straight back into the tent.
Look at him as well, like...
looks like he's living a dream.
Yeah, just smart. Mate, you've been living feral for a decade. What are you doing? Just because your missus said, can you not take as many gardening jobs, please? That is so fucking stupid. That is mind-blowing. So there you go. That'll cheer you up. Right. Now, the horror of life. Now, I'm sure we got some... Oh, here you go. This will cheer you up. So a little bit of comedy. Then we are hitting the hard stuff. All right, we are definitely hitting the hard stuff after this. So... a lot of people talk about Florida and how it is a fucking state, right? In more ways than one. So there's a congressional candidate from Miami, right? Now, I don't know about you, Sam. I like my congressional candidates, I like my politicians to not be chronically mentally ill. I know that.
Ideally, yeah.
It's just ideal. Look, it's not that I've got anything against people who are mentally ill. If you're mentally ill, I want you to get better. I want you to get help. But equally, you've got to understand
the laws, you know.
Yes. While you are in a position of power, I want your mental illness to either not be there or to have you removed from said position of power. It's not a popular stance. Apparently, it makes you prejudicial. I wouldn't want a mentally ill pilot. Wouldn't want a mentally ill surgeon. It's just, and if you think that's bad.
Never mind mentally ill, mate. I don't even want a sad surgeon. Like, if I'm going into a fucking heart surgery, all right, mate, I was going, wife just left me, like, my dog died. I'm like, whoa. How long can I get by on this pacemaker? Can we get someone else in? Or can we get this cunt something to eat? Cheer him up.
Take this fucking mask off till he's had an hand job and got his perspective on life back. But no, here's the thing. Like, obviously, if you think that's an unreasonable thing to say, some people really do. Some people say, you're contributing to the stigma around mental illness. Look, if he had shaky hands, like if he had a tremor, I wouldn't want him. If he had a fucking tick, I wouldn't want him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, like, we got to be common sense about this. So anyway, this is a congressional candidate, thankfully only a candidate, called Bettina Rodriguez Aguilera, right? And she says she's been on a UFO.
So,
right? now,
Ed's gone.
Yeah, here's the thing. I would have probably kept that to myself if I was running for office. Nah, she's all right talking about it. And not only is she all right talking about it, okay, she also says that they were blonde, big-bodied beings, right? 2 women and a man, and they visited her when she was 7 years old. And ever since then, she's communicated with them telepathically several times.
Oh, fucking hell.
Get me out. Get me out. And she said this in a 2009 interview. She talked about growing up inside a spaceship. Come on.
Mate, according to there's 30,000 skulls in a cave in the Mediterranean island of Malta that aren't humans.
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand, like, this is when you can tell someone's box really has gone. So, right?
This is how you diagnose a blown box.
Yeah, if you've ever... It's too much, isn't it? Like, this is how you know, right? So, 30,000 skulls, different from humans. Sound, all right.
Thanks for the fucking knowledge.
Yeah, I'll get the treasure map out. Good on you, love. Good on you. The world's energy center is in Africa. All right, sound. Also good stuff. Africa's just a giant battery for planet Earth, apparently. The Coral Castle, which is a limestone tourist attraction in South Miami, is actually an ancient Egyptian pyramid. Probably isn't, is it? Because it's not in Egypt and Egyptian civilization. Travel was kind of limited back then. And then, of course, the classic God is real. He's just a universal energy, isn't it?
Are you sure what you think are aliens wasn't DMT? Because this sounds a lot like a Terence McKenna speech.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? She also said that when talking to the aliens, they'd mentioned ISIS.
Why would they, though?
Not that ISIS.
All right.
That ISIS. Well, actually, she doesn't clarify. I'm assuming she's talking about the ancient Egyptian goddess, not the terrorist organization. Yeah. Because obviously we all know UFOs in Egypt. We've all seen Stargate on DMT. Right? So yeah, she's just straight running for office, no problem. Do you want this person to be your senator? Like, right, we've got to do something about renewable energy. Why don't we just hook up Africa up?
Yeah, can we just connect all our cables to Africa?
It's a giant battery. It's an energy center. Who knew?
And if you need some skulls, I know exactly where we can grab them.
And if you need skulls, forget about it. I got skulls. 30,000 of the cunts. Jesus Christ. Pretty bad. So yeah, that's coming soon to the Senate in America. Please stop this. please don't let that be the thing that happens. You know, understand as well. Like, okay, if a candidate says, "I believe in the existence of extraterrestrials,"
Oh yeah, well that isn't mental at all, is it?
That's not wild, is it? All right, sound. In an infinite universe, I imagine there's infinite possibilities. Yeah, pretty likely. I'm on board with that. You're sound. I have been aboard a UFO where I grew up, and alien beings communicated with me telepathically about the existence of ISIS. You need to be in a home. Like, it's just, there's no... They're very different, right? It's not like I'm UFO prejudice. Like, but sound. Have them. I'll even let you on board. I saw one once. All right. A UFO does just stand for unidentified flying object. I'm all right with it. You didn't know what it was, therefore it's unidentified. It was having a fly. You're all right.
No, but the thing is, right, I'm not sure if I agree with that, because I know they're probably not reasonable, because a reasonable person just probably wouldn't say that. You know what I mean? Because if you've seen someone in the sky and you don't think it is, then you're running to be in Congress. You wouldn't just go, I saw a UFO once. I'm just like, why are you saying that? Like...
Well, yeah, all right, okay, yeah, I definitely, yeah, she is probably unreasonable in the sense, but it was 2009 when she said this as well. I don't think she gave it in her speech. Hi, everyone, I'm running for office. Right. Yes, UFOs are real.
I thought it's just like part of what running. She's running on, like, I want to make a peace treaty with the aliens so we can use Africa for its power. Like, reasonable.
Just like every other fucking colonial.
Exactly.
So yeah, crazy shit. But yeah, please don't let that happen. So look, let's talk about Catalan, shall we? The whole Catalan situation, Catalonia. Yeah, it is mental, but I think it's important to talk about. It's interesting as well because like we didn't have time to pick up on it at the point. We didn't do a show while it was all going on. And yeah, it is pretty fucking wild. I mean, I saw some scenes out there during this whole incident that really fucking caught my eye for a variety of reasons. I don't want to make any glib and frank points. I mean, we're going to talk from a Eurocentric kind of point of view now, but here's what I will say. All right, I've heard a lot about how America is a fascist country now, that it's appointed a fascist dictator as president and we exist in a fascist regime. All right, I have never seen any peaceful protest shut down violently by the police. I've seen some tear gas get deployed when things have got out of control, when there's already been violence and civil unrest. I've never seen the likes of this. And what makes this all the worse is that these people were trying to vote in a referendum. They were going to polling stations and the police were deployed to stop them doing that. And you saw scenes of like elderly women getting smashed with batons in the face by men in complete body armor setups, And I just wanted to make the point right at the start, because I'm sure it's a very glib one. It's very throwaway and ephemeral. But this is kind of what when you talk about fascism, this is what it looks like. All right. It's not Donald Trump being a retard on Twitter, is it? It's not that. Right? It's not Donald Trump saying something you don't like. It's not Donald Trump tweeting, I'm going to ban transgender people from the military, and everyone in the military going, no, we're not doing that, actually, Donald, you mad cunt. It's not that, is it? This is people voting in a referendum being stopped by, armed police. It's people in the streets being beaten. It's peaceful protests being shut down, 900 people being injured by police, by the state. All right. Now, I know a lot of people probably don't. I don't know how many people we've got here or American or South American don't really understand the Catalonia situation and why they might want independence. Right. Now, understand as well. I was a big supporter for Scottish independence when the Scots wanted independence from Great Britain. For me, it always seems to be the elite. The people who focus on business rather than the people. And funnily enough, criticize popularism for the same reason. Always seems to be that group of people who are against, nations having independence. And I do think it's actually pretty interesting. You think about all of the ex-satellite states in the former USSR that had to fight and die to get independence. And people go, yeah, fucking hell, insert name of Russian premier here. God, what a tyrant, stopping these countries having independence and having their own identities. How disgraceful that people have to fight and die for this. God, it's horrible. Then you come over to Europe and people say, come on, keep Britain great. Yeah, can't have Scotland being bloody independent. What are we talking about here? So let's be clear about Catalonia. So Catalonia kind of existed before Spain. It's its own entity historically. It's got its own language, Catalan. It's got its own mythology. It's got its own history, completely separate and independent of a unified Spain. And Catalonia has always wanted to be independent. It's always maintained, it'd be bloody great if we were independent. That's why they never surrendered their cultural identity or anything like this. But subsequent Spanish governments have always kind of oppressed the Catalonia region and people who want to preserve the Catalan identity. When you move into like the economic side of things, it does get a little bit more problematic, which was the same with when we had Scottish independence in the UK and indeed Welsh independence. We all remember the Welsh devolution, where the Welsh took a bit of a sort of a side deal, wasn't it? We got our own little devolved parliament, but we were still kind of part of the main thing. And the reason for that was it was like a mutually beneficial business arrangement, ultimately. We do have some things that people need, agriculture. We've still got all the coal reserves. Steel. Just about,
yeah.
And we don't have a lot of natural jobs and economic growth. So we have to take a lot of subsidies and handouts, especially in the agricultural parts of Wales, where you get paid a subsidy for like leaving fields fallow, so you don't farm once every like 3 years or whatever to keep the fertility and nutrients in the soil and this kind of thing. Stop over farming. So it was mutually beneficial for us to not have full independence, even though I'm sure a lot of Welsh people and Plaid Cymru, the Welsh party, would have wanted it. So with Scotland, there was problems because Scotland, while they were part of the UK, they were implementing policies that were going to kind of affect things on a large budgetary on a large budgetary scale, because they wanted like free universities for Scottish students. They wanted, they want subsidized medication on the NHS for Scottish nationals. Interestingly enough, nobody called Scottish people racist for that, but whatever. And I fully support Scotland's identity and their right to be independent. They've got their own language in the form of Gaelic. They've got their own history. It's not like they've ever said, you know what, wouldn't it just be great if we were all bloody English? No, they're one of the old enemies, Even the Romans, when they got over here, were like, they're fucking wild up there. Let's build a wall. Very Trumpian. Now that's an adjective, wasn't it? Hadrian's fucking wall. It was shit. I've been there. I've been to Hadrian's wall. Not that like impressive now. Or something. Yeah, it was pretty. It is now. I mean, I don't know if it was ever big. It probably was. But apparently, it never get completed anyway. It'll probably be, you watch Hadrian and Trump will be the next comparison and all of that. So anyway, back to, so I understand it, like, because Catalan, because it's been a depressed region and because it was oppressed and took over by Spanish kings in the past. And honestly, my grasp of Spanish history is poor. If you're from Spain and there's anything to correct, leave it in the chat. I'll be sure to mention it. But basically, nobody can really sort of discern how profitable it is, because there's parts of Catalonia that are economically depressed and they do sort of borrow heavily from Spain. And there's no real, there's areas of Catalonia that contribute very richly to the Spanish economy and everything else. So they've always wanted to sort of be their own region. Unlike the Basque separatists, there have been some kind of breakaway terrorist organizations, but I wouldn't say to the same degree as like ETA, which were the Basque separatist, organization that were bombing people throughout my childhood. And Catalonia has always been sort of almost politically, it's been pretty much left leaning, whereas it's always Spain who've been the right, you know, with the monarchy and Franco and everything else, you know. So they've always maintained that they should be independent. I've just brought a number up here, actually. So Catalan contributes 20% to Spain's national GDP.
Fuck no.
Scotland only contributed 8% of the GDP to the UK, and yet that was deemed enough to sort of have their own, you know, independence and stuff. And people were worried about that 8%. So obviously 20% of your GDP now demanding to be its own nation with no guarantee of trade agreements, jobs, taxation, whatever. It's a big fucking deal. So anyway, it now was the time when it looked like they were going to have a referendum on the issue. And yeah, let's do it. You know, let's actually have a fucking serious assessment of what the people want. Now, understand, a referendum in Spain isn't binding. You know, just because the people voted a certain way doesn't mean the government has to enact it. But it's a very good barometer, isn't it? We had a referendum, for example, in the UK over getting rid of the pound and moving over to the euro, and we didn't want to do it. And at the time, this was considered a very stupid economic move. Economists were saying we're going to miss out. And when the euro flourished initially and the pound was weak against the euro, economists were saying, fucking hell, we're going to tank everything. It was kind of like Brexit all over again. And then, boom, obviously the eurozone collapsed. We're still sat there with the pound. Good call. Hindsight's 2020. But in no ways was that referendum going to be binding anyway. The government can pretty much do what it wants. They're under no obligation to follow a referendum. So this referendum gets called and people go out. And again, I don't know if you want to play some of these videos. It is mental. It is mental. And what you got to remember is 90% of people who voted in this referendum from Catalonia backed independence. I want you to think about that number. In fact, look, let me tell you exactly how many people are in Catalonia, just to give you an idea of the sheer volume of people crying out for fucking independence in this area. So the Catalonian region, do we have a population? Yeah, here you go. So in the last census of 2016, Catalonia is 7.5 million people. So that's like larger than like Denmark, for example, you know, which is like 5.7. So 90% of voters want independence. And if you've there's a video there, I think about 1 minute long, about halfway down in the Telegraph report.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, just play this. Just 3, 2, 1 it if you want.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Go. So you can see there was a really heavy police presence. There's some really bad videos. You know, if you want to go online, they're really violent. There's blood involved. People are being shot with like those fucking beanbag guns and blah, blah, blah. Now, the officials have come out, and these numbers aren't disputed by Catalan officials either. And they've said it was only 43% voter turnout, which is incredibly low. If you think about it, people were trying to talk about how invalid Brexit was because it had a low turnout, and you know, people don't like it when people don't go and vote. But it's got to be said, one of the things that definitely isn't being factored into this 42% number, how the fuck can you vote if you can't get into a polling
exactly,
station?
and why would I go and vote if you're like, oh yeah, what's happening when you go vote? Oh, the police are just beating the fuck out of you with batons. Yeah, I'm not that arsed, actually. I guess we'll stay Spanish. Like, so that means 42% of people were willing to go and vote despite the risk of being beaten by police.
And again, let's talk about some of these numbers. So the Spanish Ministry of the Interior had police close down 79 polling stations out of about 2,300. There were many more that were blocked by police, according to independent journalist reports. There were multiple instances of people who attempted to vote being beaten by police. And there's also, as well, sort of reports coming through now where people are saying that some of the votes were sort of discounted by rogue elements within the vote counting system. So, all things told, a 43% turnout, a 42% turnout, it's between that depending on which source you go to. I don't think it's that bad. A lot of people are saying the vote is invalid because of that. You know,
I'd imagine the most of the people who didn't go and vote would have voted for independence, right? Because if you're voting for what the Spanish police want, you don't have to be scared. You know what I mean? You just go, well, I'm voting to remain anyway, and then they probably won't hit you with batons, will they?
So, you know, it's tough for me because I understand that you want democracy to be as representative of what the majority of people want at any given time. It's the central tenet behind democracy. But it's not that simple when you have rogue elements, a police state preventing people from voting, when there's repercussions from voting. I mean, if we go like this, for example, I'll tell you some countries that have unbelievable voter turnouts, right? Let me see if I can find you the numbers here. But I'll tell you which ones have it. Dictatorships. If you look, for example, when Castro had the first democratic elections in Cuba, the voter turnout was pretty high because it was mandated you had to vote. And you better believe...
Tick the right box.
Yeah, you better believe that you tick the right box. People know about the fucking thug that is Mugabe. And how voter turnout started out incredibly high because he wanted to show that he had a mandate for the people. So he employed paid thugs to go into villages and small settlements and beat people if they didn't vote in accordance with what the state wanted. High voter turnout. It's incredible what you can achieve with a bit of violence, really. So I don't know if we should discount the right to statehood, which is what the Catalonia parties and leaders have said that they're entitled to now off the back of a 42.3% voter turnout. That's the BBC source. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You know, I'm conflicted. I think the scenes that came out of this referendum were far more fucking disturbing than a low voter turnout. You know? But I mean, what are your thoughts? I'll bring you in because this is a serious topic. I want to get a barometer for what you
my thoughts on the turnout.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty high regarding it. Like I said, imagine how scared you'd be knowing that there's always a risk that someone's just going to beat you and that your vote isn't going to matter anyway because they're ripping the polling stations away. So, you know what I mean? It's never going to count.
So, you know, I don't know. It seems to me like that people are really... It's almost like they're looking for an excuse. I can understand why. Because I'm gonna show things from both sides here on the Catalan issue, but I just want to make people aware as well of a development that happened. So off the back of this vote and people crying out for independence and this police intervention, the king of Spain, that's King Felipe. very rarely speaks out about politics. It's kind of deemed a bit taboo. In the same way it is in the UK, you know, where you have a monarchy and a government that coexist. The Queen very rarely speaks out about anything political because we have got so many convoluted and fucked up systems in the UK. So first of all, apart from the fact that it is a series of a group of countries that have come together with their own parliaments that recognize one monarch based in England. And that the military is pledged to the monarchy, but it's the government that tells the military where they go and fight and gets us into the wars and declares what interventions we need.
Is that some sort of loophole? So, like, if the Queen wanted to declare war, she just could or something?
Everyone talks about that. Everyone talks about that. Obviously, basically what we've got now is the royal family is effectively a state-sponsored mascot for everything that's British. You know, it costs the taxpayer, it costs the taxpayer hundreds of millions of pounds every year. And the only justification I ever hear from why we keep the monarchy is either A, it's tradition, or B, it's good for tourism. I don't think that really warrants us dumping hundreds of millions onto some anachronism. I'm an abolitionist when it comes to the idea.
Two Swords is good for tourism. We're not paying them hundreds of mils.
So maybe I'm a little bit controversial there, but I just think the concept of a monarchy, even in modern society, just has no place. Like, they're not elected officials. We've all got on board and we believe that Western democracy is the ideal. It's the best system we've got for now until we evolve as beings, right? So that's what we go with. It's still fraught with problems, but why the fuck do we have these, like, side power players where it's like, why are you here? I was just born, wasn't I? What? You fucking what, mate? That's the system, is it? Yeah, there was this cunt and they had a kid. Now I'm the cunt because that's the system. Well, it seems a bit out, but we've got a government. Yeah, I don't interfere with that. Why the fuck are we paying you to live then? What's going on? You don't do anything. Nah, people like to take photos of all the big buildings that I'm given by the state.
My gran's got a crown in it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It always reminds me of that fucking Monty Python and the Holy Grail bit about, you know, King Arthur. I'm King Arthur, King of the Britons. And it's like, what? Because some lady in the lake threw a fucking sword at you. It makes no sense, does it? It's ridiculous. So obviously monarchies are ridiculous, especially in countries where you have fully functional governments and governments that are capable of making their own decisions quite autonomously and independent from the monarchy. So anyway, it's a taboo, basically, for the monarch to sort of dip their toes in the political waters. Well, King Felipe did that and actually said that the leaders of the Catalan, pro-Catalonia movement were being hugely irresponsible.
Why?
And that they shouldn't be whipping people up into a frenzy. You can see this here. It was
reported people with batons, though.
Well, I mean, not him.
Not him personally.
The pro-Spain government. But yeah, he didn't feel the need to condemn the Spanish government's reaction to... This isn't a new issue. This isn't like the Arab Spring, all right? This isn't a bunch of people suddenly deciding out of the fucking blue, hey, wouldn't it be great if we were independent? Those fuckers over there are getting independence. This is an old medieval problem that we've just kind of muddied through. You're like, well, it'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll have the Basque region and the Catalonia region. We'll have a Spain and we'll have a king and a government and we'll all just get along and pretend that nobody wants to be independent. It's not working anymore. People have had enough. Especially, what you've also got to remember is, of course, Spain have had a lot of economic hardships lately. Well, when you contribute 20% of the GDP and you believe you can be masters of your own destiny, you believe you have, it was like with Scotland flexing over the oil that they've got in the North Sea, and all the access to it and stuff. And, they were like, well, fuck it, we've got access to oil. You might want that at some point. So, yeah, I guess we'll be independent and just sell that to America and anyone else who wants it, And this is what I mean. It's not like Catalonia is without its own resources. So in times of economic hardship, when you've been led down a fucking alley by a government and it's not working, had all these problems, collapse of the fucking euro, all of this shit, independence sounds pretty good roundabout now.
Yeah. This king looks shit as well, but at least our queen, when she does a speech, she puts her crown on, she has some jewels, a nice little coat or something. This guy's just in a suit. This motherfucker could be an accountant. Why are you talking? Don't step to me unless you got some fucking bling bling. You can't be a king just sitting looking average.
That's the thing. He looks like a politician, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's the worst part about it, I think.
Could be a fucking manager at Greg's for all I know.
I can't believe you're talking about the king of Spain, comparing him to a manager in Greg's. I've warned you, Sam. I've counted those steak bakes.
I didn't have any. I don't have it.
You're having the steak bake on the slice, Sam. So yeah, but you're right. You can't be a king without bling. And honestly, what I will say is that's probably a very deliberate decision. In the same way that, for example, when you're at Barcelona, you know they all the old school Barcelona players are like, we don't like, while the country's been struggling economically, we do not drive sports cars. And they've actually chastised like new players who come into the club who aren't aware of the culture and the connection with the city and everything. You know, they say to them, like, get rid of that. You can't be driving around in a fucking Lamborghini when people are fucking, you know, there's like 30% unemployment or whatever the fuck it is.
Instead of just hiding that you're rich, go buy some rice and share it out between everyone.
Yeah.
Nah, you know, don't give any money away, but just don't show you got any, like... Don't give the jig up.
You know, that's why a lot of the players who were there for long times, like, you know, Xavi and guys who came through the youth system, they were all like, you know, they're beloved by the people because, you know, they never flaunted their wealth, you know, which is obviously considerable.
Again, yes, they just signed a lifelong contract with Barcelona. One man club.
Yeah, Iniesta, one of the fucking greatest of all time. So there you go. But yeah, so the king then came out and labelled them a disgrace and for whipping up a mob and whipping up a frenzy. I mean, I don't know what calling for a referendum is.
Hey guys, want to exercise your democratic rights? Stop whipping them into a frenzy. We're gonna have to beat them now, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to me. Like the idea of whipping people up into a frenzy over their right to have their own identity. It's interesting, isn't it, that in a time of identity politics, when we say, hey, you can identify as whatever you want, we deprive people who have a very own distinct cultural identity, and indeed one that is backed in history. We say, nah, it's not good for business, though. You can't have that. And like, if you've ever been to Spain, I've been to Spain a few times, you know, you know very quickly. I mean, fuck, in some cases you can tell by looking at somebody what part of Spain they're from. It's not like these are distinct people. It's crazy to me. I really thought this would have been resolved by now, honestly. I would have thought we would have had the Basque region and Catalonia all separated, but obviously, you know, there's people against it. So what happened recently is there's been some arrests, of course, just to show you again what a police state kind of looks like. Let me find it for you. I think it was on the BBC again. Here it is. I think this is the one. Yeah, so this was literally just right about the same time I was hearing about Sean Hughes. Here it is. The Catalan separatists have been jailed. The two key members of the movement, Jordi Sanchez, who's the head of the Catalan National Assembly, known as the ANC, and Jordi Cuixart. I'm probably saying that wrong because that looks like almost like kind of a... Their X's are a bit weird in Spanish pronunciation. He's the leader of Omnium Cultural. They're just held without bail and are under investigation for sedition, which is like a wild, fucking antiquated crime.
What is sedition? What does that even mean?
Well, so sedition, right, is when you are sort of rebelling against. It's usually, in general terms, it means authority, but they usually use it for terms of when you're against a monarchy. It's like a super old school crime, if you know what I mean. It's like, it's like treason but a bit more spicy, you know.
Like a spicy treason.
Yeah. So yeah, sedition is, and I have no idea where the root of the word is, or sort of where it comes from, but sedition is, yeah, it's a crime when you basically are pushing against authority within a country. Let's see. Let's have a look at the etymology of sedition, actually. The term sedition, in its modern meaning, first appeared in the Elizabethan era, 1590, as the notion of inciting by words or writing disaffection towards the state or constituted authority. Sedition complements treason and martial law, while treason controls primarily the privileged, ecclesiastical opponents, priests and Jesuits, as well as certain commoners, and martial law frightens commoners. Sedition frightens intellectuals. So there you go. That's why sedition is obviously a bad thing. But the idea of seeing people thrown in jail without bail, we don't even know how long for, because of sedition in 2017 in Europe, in a major European country, is fucking mental. And that literally just happened today. So pretty wild. Now there is, interestingly enough, the American government, with a man you might have heard of called Donald Trump. He's the president, Sam.
Yes.
He's the president.
You sure? Most people told me he ain't.
Yeah, true, actually. Hashtag not my president. He has actually spoke up and said that he wants Spanish unity. And you'll find this a lot with American presidents. You'll never hear an American president say they want breakaway states in any country. And if you think that's an exaggeration, President Obama was actually against an independent Scotland in 2014. Here he is. I'll prove that, just in case you think I'm making it up because I dislike Obama. Don't dislike Obama. Thought he was a great statesman.
Yeah. Oh, he's a legend.
Yeah. Great statesman, rocked the mic like few presidents ever, really good in times of crisis in terms of putting out a clear message, droned a lot of innocent people to death, though. So, not all great, was he? It's almost as if world leaders were always problematic figures holistically. But anyway, here he is. Barack Obama told people in Scotland, and he did it at the last minute just before they had the referendum, like, do not go, do not be independent. He actively spoke out. I think it's interesting, by the way, that we're like, bloody hell, Russia was interfering in the elections. Well, Barack Obama's done it multiple times. Like, Barack Obama's gone out and spoke on the eve of elections on more than one occasion. Side issue. Don't let facts get in the way. Bill Clinton was against Quebec being independent in 1995. And also, in fact, while we're still on with Obama, he, in 2015, he also said, so just in case you think Trump's evil and a Hitler-like figure, and Obama would never do that, here he is in Catalan news, being quoted in an interview saying he wants a strong and unified Spain when he sat down with King Felipe. Saying none of that independence nonsense. Now, this is...
They're wearing the same suit, look. It looks like two presidents meeting.
Yeah, it's all right, isn't it?
Step your bling-bling up, dog.
Yeah, I'd have definitely wore a crown if I was me.
Yeah, imagine how baller you'd look.
So...
Full red cape and everything.
So, what I'm saying here is, American presidents are always going to take the stance of unification. There's a very good reason for this. Money. It's always about business and money. And if you don't understand the relationship Spain has with the US, they're certainly a friend of the United States historically, and always have been. There's there's two military bases in Spain, actually. I know this recently because I looked it up for another story I was working on. Some guy was pretending to be in the military, claimed to have served in a base in Spain, but he also said he was in the infantry. There's no infantry base in Spain. There'd be no point in it. But there is an American Air Force and an American naval base in Spain. Obviously, America has military bases everywhere, but, just saying. And if I remember, Spain were also against the whole Chavez regime in Venezuela and pledged their resources towards it. Didn't they help with the U.S. independence as well, like way back when?
Who knows?
I think they did. I think that's true. I might not be. I don't know. My American history is shocking for someone who lives here. But anyway, so and there's business as well to consider. There are some overlapping business interests, and they want a stable region, a stable Europe. Blah blah blah. So obviously, America is completely on board with the idea of keeping them together. And I don't know about that. I don't know if I can sort of support that view, because think about all the countries that we've got. It's really weird, isn't it? Like, for example, if you look at some of the breakaway countries from Russia, you think about some of the wars that have happened in the countries that have wanted to become independent from Russia. And people, we sit here and we go, God, it's terrible. Putin, is invading these places. But, think about some of the countries we take for granted, like going way back when. Estonia was part of Russia once, and Latvia and Lithuania. It's why can't we have a Catalonia on the map? What is the fundamental core problem? If the people who live there and identify as Catalonian, and like I say, there is this distinct cultural history and everything else that backs it up, why can't they be independent? I don't see the issue here. Yes, there'll be a period around about 5 years where it'll be an infrastructural nightmare, but there's a lot of rhetoric gets put around. They're calling them like secessionists. I think it's just too strong a term. Catalonia was absorbed into Spain. They were. It's not like they're creating something completely new. So I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's
especially
crazy.
When you said like 20% of the GDP sounds massive, so they're probably just like, fuck this. If everyone else is poor, we'll just make our own city. The promised land.
So yeah, it's tough for me, brother. It's tough. And what I will say is, wherever you stand on the issue of Catalonian independence, those scenes in Spain are disgusting. They're completely unacceptable. I'm deeply troubled by the fact I haven't seen a world leader speak out about the violence. It's one thing. Again, Trump could have done this. Trump could have earned some brownie points saying that shit's not acceptable, but we all know he actually doesn't mind thug-like tactics to get things done. He said as much at meetings with the police, and where he's like, "Don't be too gentle with those suspects." Keyword being suspect, and having they were suspected of doing something. It's not been proven. We all know he doesn't mind it. And we all know a lot of world leaders don't mind it. I'm amazed, though, that there isn't more people coming out and saying what a fucking disgrace it was. My stance is Catalonia should be independent. It's.
Yeah, I think they have the right to vote on it. Minimally, come on, at least give them a chance to say if they want to be independent.
Yeah, so I'm kind of blown away, honestly. And look, I know the other side of it. The other side is, it's all bloody propaganda, blah, 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 blah. They're rewriting their own history. No. There's a lot of unified Spain people. But, I've always kind of felt that if people want to go.
Yeah, exactly. If they want to go, just let them go.
You say it about footballers, don't you? You know what I mean? If he doesn't want to play for the club, you got to let him go. If your country doesn't want to play for a unified fucking Spain, let him out. Let him go. It doesn't. You can go on to have a good relationship, build those trade deals, those trade agreements. No reason why Catalonia and Spain can't happily coexist and do business with each other. Yeah, it's madness. It's madness to try and fight against that level of tide. And when you send out armed police to truncheon people exercising their democratic right to vote, you can't say we're the good guys anymore. You're not on the right side. That's just the way it is. So that was my stand. A lot of people said they wanted us to talk about it, and we never did. So yeah, it was pretty fucking wild that it's kind of come to this. Violent state police stopping people voting in Central Europe, like in mainland Europe. So there was another thing as well that came out. And this is a big win for the gay community, Sam.
Right.
Because you know what aversion therapy is, right?
Aversion therapy, no.
Yeah, aversion therapy, yeah. It's when basically what they try to do is aversion therapy is a psychiatric treatment where they try and put you off doing something by creating a mental block for you to do it.
Right.
Okay. And
what do you mean, what kind of mental block? Like, if
well,
I do this, something bad will happen, or?
Yeah, if every time, let's just say, for example, let's say if every time you saw something and I created a negative stimulus, like I gave you an electric shock or whatever, and then eventually you would have a different reaction to looking at that thing, right?
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So this is finally, the Royal College of Psychiatrists have issued a statement basically saying, you know what, trying to cure gays using electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
And other things besides. I'll read you some of this. It's actually fucking shocking. It really is shocking. What they're saying there is that, sorry about that. Probably shouldn't have fried people for being gay to put them off. Then it was this whole idea, which, people believe for a really long period of time in Britain. This isn't ancient history. Shockingly, it's not ancient history. That they believed being homosexual was a mental disorder. I mean, the funny thing is, it's not funny, it's horrifying. But I'm pretty sure I could find you people now that believe this.
Oh.
It's mad, right? So what they used to do was... And sometimes, what's heartbreaking about it is sometimes it was voluntary. Some people didn't want to live with the stigma, didn't want to be ostracized, didn't want to live a clandestine life, and the stress that came with it, the permanent fear of being discovered or outed. So some people voluntarily went into these, clinics, which, again, it's an abomination to use that word. And they went in there and they'd be like, okay, can you cure me? And they'd be like, yep. All we do is we give you hours and hours of repeated electric shocks while we expose you to gay porn, and we give you a nausea medication. So every time you feel aroused, we pump you full of an emetic that'll make you sick. And eventually, with a combination of vomiting and frying your brain, you won't want to suck dick anymore.
We'll just connect you to the D-gay car battery over here, and it'll wipe it right out, mate.
It's so crazy, and it's horrifying. And this is like a dirty little secret, if you like, of kind of the psychiatric world at this period of time. Like, you all know about Alan Turing, right? Turing. Yeah. Legendary mathematician. Think he was might have been involved with the cracking of the Enigma code during World War II, which helped us get Nazi secrets and helped us win the war. Although it was a team effort, I believe there was some Polish mathematicians involved in it. But it's what we call the Turing test. The Turing test is named after him. So he's a legend, and it's mental. His story is heartbreaking. A lot of people know about the Enigma machine. A lot of people know about his contribution to maths. He died at 41, this incredible mind, this incredible intellect. And the reason for that was because in 1952, he was prosecuted for homosexual acts, which was deemed a gross indecency. He was prosecuted under anti-sodomy laws and gross indecency laws. And he was a criminal in the UK, and he was going to go to prison for a long time. And he didn't want to go to prison because he was an intellectual, quite a fet, wasn't really cut out for that kind of life of a tough 1950s prison environment. So he, as an alternative to jail, he agreed to be chemically castrated. Now, chemical castration isn't what it sounds like. We don't scorch your genitals off with acid. We just give you drugs that completely kill any sexual impulse, which can again have long, profound, lasting effect. And in 1954, just 2 years later, he died from cyanide poisoning, which some people to this day maintain was a suicide, although some people say it might have been accidental. It took until 2009 for him to be given a pardon. Well, there was a big movement. That was when it first started. I think the pardon officially came through like 4 or 5 years later. So it's like it's modern. It's like it's in the 2010s that we pardoned this great mind, one of the most genius scientists, mathematicians we've ever had in Britain. And we had to issue a posthumous pardon, something like 50 years plus after his death, probably a suicide, for being gay. So there is this like awful, torrid history about how we persecuted homosexual people, especially men, it's got to be said. This all ties in. The English mindset about lesbianism is very different to homosexuality, and it's all steeped in Victorian era taboos. In fact, if I remember rightly, I'll just check this isn't fake news, but Queen Victoria didn't recognize lesbians as being real. Apparently it might well be a myth.
What
But one
do
of the
you mean? Well, are they witches?
No, just that she understood homosexuals and buggery, but she could never quite understand why two women would want to get it on together. So she was always like, no, that's silly. That's nonsense. And that was, and certainly
I can understand a bumming, but what's going on over there?
Yes, certainly, whether or not that's true, there's a couple of things disputing it and a couple of things asserting it, so I haven't got time to pick through it. Whether or not that's true, certainly it's reflected in a lot of attitudes of the time. You don't hear the term lesbian, for example, isn't there, whereas buggery, sodomy, all of these things, like even the use of the word catamite. Do you know this word?
No, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's an ancient Roman word. A catamite is a young boy who was just used for sex by anyone, a catamite. And we still use these classical terms even in like the 1700s and the 1800s. Don't get me wrong, they used to use it as an insult. Like broken like a catamite, So this is all true. You can Google this shit. But again, the crimes that were perpetrated, and these are crimes. They call them an injustice. These are crimes that were perpetrated against gay people just for being gay. This is deranged. You can't imagine it, can you? That there would ever be some form of clandestine scientific experimentation, but really torture towards any minority group just for being within that minority group. So look, I'll read you some of this thing. This is the statement. It's from Professor Wendy Byrne. It says, there are no words that can repair the damage done to anyone who has ever been deemed mentally unwell simply for loving a person of the same sex. For those who were then treated using non-scientific evidence-based procedures by mental health professionals up until as late as the 1970s, the trauma of such experiences can never be erased. And they talk about some of the methods here, how patients were shown homoerotic pictures and given electric shocks. They were given drugs that made them vomit or shit themselves spontaneously over these sessions. And these sessions, it wasn't like you go in at 12, you get a few electric shocks, and you come out and, I think I'll get married. It
wasn't
now.
like acupuncture, like it was torture.
No, they did this to people for months, mate. They did it for months. And one of the nurses even said that when they had these, the drugs reacted and they shit themselves or they vomited on themselves or they were too weak to get out of the bed from a heavy session and they just urinated where they lay, the nurses were instructed to just leave them in their bodily fluids for days at a time to increase that sense of shame. This is like a torture camp.
Yeah.
This was done under the guise of medication. This was done under the banner of the Hippocratic Oath, which first principally says, do no harm. Camps like this still exist. Fundamentalist Christians, of course, still believe that homosexuality is evil and abomination. I'm sure you've seen the Westboro Baptist Church and their charming signs at the funerals of dead soldiers. It's mad. And for years, for decades, the Royal College of Psychiatrists have ignored that this went on and this terrible, indelible stain on the history of sort of gay rights. It's unbelievable. Now, one of the activists, have you ever heard of Peter Tatchell?
No.
So Peter Tatchell, if I remember rightly, he might still be a politician, but I know he was a gay rights campaigner. I think he also stood, because he was a human rights campaigner who came to Britain, but I think he did stand for Parliament. Yeah. He was a parliamentary candidate for Bermondsey back in the 80s. So he was like a sort of low-level, local politician, but he's more known for his human rights activism. And Peter Tatchell has been speaking out about this for fucking years. And everybody's just like sort of ignored him and said, stick to more important things. You gotta own up to the shit you do, and you gotta fucking apologize so people can sort of heal and move on. It's mad. It's mad. Like for 50 fucking years, this just sort of stood there as like being, that's just something we did. Bloody up. The times were different back then, Sam, weren't they? Those wacky gays complaining about it now.
Isn't this still a thing as well? Like, isn't it still legal in America?
Well, one of the myths about Mike Pence,
is that he's somehow into that. I've heard a lot.
Now, if I remember rightly, let me just see this. Even according to sites like PolitiFact, which we all know are heavily skewed, there was a myth that circulated that like Mike Pence supported what they call it's now called conversion therapy. And he wanted to put so the allegation goes, and it was a Democratic governor that made these claims. Gavin Newsom said that Mike Pence wanted to spend taxes on aversion therapy, and he said it on a website during the campaign trail. Now, this, of course, first of all, you've got to take everything on the campaign trail with a massive pinch of salt.
I don't know how much salt I'll need for that, though, if that was said.
No, but this is what I'm saying. So there isn't a source to that particular quote.
All right.
And PolitiFact acknowledged this. So look, here it is. Look, I'll bring you up the PolitiFact research. And again, keep in mind, I do not consider PolitiFact or Snopes or any of these sites to be good sources. They're very biased in their presentation of information. They do have a very left-leaning slant, even to the point where, you'll find instances where Donald Trump has said the same thing as Bernie. Donald Trump gets pants on fire. Bernie Sanders gets a half true. It's very skewed, is all I'm saying. They should not in any way, shape, or form be taken as absolute, but they do occasionally link to some of the sources where they get it from. So they, when asked about the claim and where they got it from, the governor, the Democratic governor that said it, pointed to something Pence had written on a campaign website in a section on his website called Strengthening the American Family. And what it says is that Congress should support the reauthorization of the Ryan White Care Act only after completion of an audit to ensure federal dollars were no longer being given to organizations that celebrate and encourage the types of behaviors that facilitate the spreading of the HIV virus. Resources should be directed towards those institutions which provide assistance to those seeking to change their sexual behavior. Now, that quote there is what they say is he supports conversion therapy. It doesn't mention conversion therapy. It doesn't even mention homosexuality. It's incredible. Now, a lot of people say, oh, but this is what Republicans do. They're right to a certain degree. The right do this. The right always cloak their true intentions in very benign sounding language. I mean, the left do it now as well. If the one thing the left have learned over the last few years, it's how to play dirty like the right. That's why the left is this fucking freewheeling abomination now, and it's impossible to take a side. But you know, the when they talk about, you know, behavior that facilitates the spread of the HIV virus, intravenous drug use would technically facilitate the spreading of the HIV virus.
But it's sexual behavior.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah, okay. And unprotected sex would.
Yeah, that's what I thought was the other alternative.
Yeah. Unprotected sex, promiscuous sex, anal sex with a woman. You're more likely to get infected off the bat. So because it doesn't mention homosexuality, and it certainly doesn't mention conversion therapy, I think it's always been massively overplayed that like Mike Pence is for this. Now, here's what I would be comfortable saying. I bet secretly Mike Pence probably doesn't like gays all that much.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he seems to be a traditional Christian guy. And, you know, we know that Christianity is problematic. And it like a lot of religions are, by the way, in case anyone hasn't noticed. A lot of religions, because it's almost as if they were, I don't know, out of date, right? Like, well past their fucking sell-by date.
You must breed. You can only be with people you can breed with.
Yeah.
You must further our population.
Right? Yes, exactly.
And
it's
expand
almost,
our ideology.
It's almost as if they had problems with the gays in general, because it was steeped in some sort of old mandate about, you know, propagate and spread and create more numbers and stuff. But you know, I mean, maybe that's a wild assertion on my part. But and when I say don't like it, he might never discriminate against one. He might be happy to shake his hands and meet with them. But I'm guessing overall, probably internally, if he had a preference about if he was judging somebody, he would probably prefer if they were heterosexual. I mean, I don't think that's a wild statement. I think that probably applies to a large number of the Republican Party, honestly, and probably some Democrats too. But again, the idea that he's ever publicly supported conversion therapy is kind of it's a bit iffy. It's not a fact in and of itself. And of course, then what he does is it comes down to the old dog whistling. Dog whistling is just a way to basically nail you to the wall for something you didn't say, on the basis that
that's what you mean.
Yeah. Other people who maybe think it like what you've said. So what you really mean is you're dog whistling. Yeah. So I never like that term either. I fully reject dog whistling as a concept. It's stupid. It's a really stupid way to sort of break down some quite complicated linguistic codes and things like semiology. It's a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle. Only racists can hear it. That's what our dog whistle operates, by the way. This is another reason why it's a stupid term. A dog whistle can only be heard by dogs, right? But the statements that people make can be interpreted by anybody. The idea that there's like secret messaging, I understand what they were going for, but obviously a human can't hear a dog whistle, you know. So it's a dumb term. It's not a real thing. It's like it's like basically all the cunts, all these like fucking shitty liberal motherfuckers that like went to universities and all wanted to be pseudo intellectuals. They just invented basically their own like group of terminologies that really don't have any basis in anything, which is like, you can do this in, you know, sociology, for example. You can just do this. And that's where dog whistling and all this other stuff comes from, all these other ridiculous terms, mansplaining, you know, it's on a level with that for me. He's dog whistling. Nah, he's not. So there you have it. So on that subject, by the way, because I said this was going to be like a heavy show, it's been pretty serious, apart from the funny stuff at the beginning. AIDS, Sam.
Right. We're going in.
AIDS. Now, AIDS, it's you know, we made some good progression, I'd say, in treating AIDS. It's no longer a death sentence. You can take retrovirals for decades. We've had a slight increase, if I'm correct, in infection rates in the West. But overall, treatments improved. We're actually closer to a vaccine. I believe there's been some clinical trials of a vaccine that's kind of worked in HIV exposure in mice. So I guess if you are going to go out there and have unprotected sex, do it with a mouse.
I remember I saw something like, I can't remember what disease they took, but they made a disease. And AIDS takes, is it the red blood cells? It depletes your red blood cells? Or your
No, it's white.
Cells?
It's white.
Yeah,
it's white.
The white blood cells. So basically what they did is they took the AIDS virus. They took a different disease that starves of your blood cells. Starved it of the blood cells so it didn't feed it and just kept feeding it AIDS cells. And eventually it started eating the AIDS. Like, it just eats the AIDS. Well, not eats, you know what I mean? Technically speaking, it eats the AIDS. So
that's good.
You put that disease in you, and then it eats the AIDS, and suddenly you've just got a disease that eats AIDS, and it's not bad.
So understand, again, I'll talk about my own experience here. I'm going to show you something if I can find it. It fucking terrified me as a kid. Let me see. Hang on, sorry. I wasn't preparing to do this bit. Here it is. I think this is the one. Here it is. It's obviously been taken from VHS, so it's grainy and it's terrible. So in the 80s, right, there was obviously all this talk about this new disease, AIDS, and certainly it was like people. Whenever anything like this is introduced into sort of popular culture, people don't know what the fuck's going on. We knew nothing about AIDS. Right, I remember people on the news coming out and saying what we know is it's not airborne, but maybe you can get it from spit. People didn't know what the fuck was going on at first as well. I mean, there was this. Obviously, this is where the myth comes from. Well, first of all, everyone at school got told AIDS started because someone had sex with a monkey, right? Which you must have heard that.
Yeah, I remember it's in a Ricky Gervais stand-up as well.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, he's the first guy who got AIDS. He went to the doctor. And he's like, "Well, have you been fucking a monkey?" No, he's like, "Oh no, have you been eating monkeys?" And he goes, "No, I haven't ate any monkeys." He's like, "Well, you're either eating monkeys or fucking monkeys." Yeah, I ate a monkey. I was eating monkeys.
No, I see the bit. Because I mean, look, it seems absurd to me. The idea that, what happens? We've got people fucking animals all the time. Some people are still doing it. You know what I mean? A new disease doesn't enter in. If it did, we'd be fucked, wouldn't we? Oh, just had sex with a budgie. That's it, right? Well, we got CAIDS, cancer and AIDS combined. Is that what you think?
How swine flu happened, mate. Those conservatives fucking those pig faces.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, obviously just fucking an animal doesn't make you have a disease. But I literally remember as a kid, it was like, oh, yeah, someone's been shagging monkeys, haven't they? Like that. No, surely that it doesn't make scientific sense. I mean, of course it does. Think about it. We get mad cow off eating beef. So obviously people have been shagging monkey, but not the same, is it?
Get mad cow. Well, you get mad cow from eating beef of cows that have ate other cows' brains.
I reckon it was cows that were shagging cows, Sam.
No, they literally get kuru, but that's what mad cow
disease is. I know. It's
it's cow kuru.
New variant, fucking, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease.
Eating fucking cow prions.
I found out the other day, actually, just as an aside, British people can't give blood in America because of
mad cow disease.
Yeah.
All right.
Someone told me that. I think I was going to give blood for something. I can't remember what.
High risk, mate. Not even worth the blood. Nah, they'll take it. You don't know what the fuck he's got.
I've got tats as well. You don't like that. Obviously engaged in some very dubious sexual activities. Or
what do they ask you when you give blood? How many people you fucked? How many drugs you take? They just assess your general risk.
Well, for me, it was the case. If I walked in, he went, "Nah, are you that cunt off the Richard Lewis show?" There's only two Richard Lewises. There's a Jewish comedian and me. And I went, yeah. And he went, nah, we've heard some of your stuff. Fuck that, mate. Your blood's rotten. Get out. No, but I want to help.
Have Lemmy's blood.
I want to help the disaster victims. Nah. Come in, Mr. Richards. Come in, Keith Richards. Yeah, just over here. Well, fucking hell.
Get Ozzy in. We'll just drain him.
Yeah, exactly. There's a vial of Rock Hudson's blood over there. What are you talking about? So anyway, yeah. So no one wants mine.
We got a vial of Elvis's blood that he just shit out prior to dying. It's got some peanut butter in there, but I think we can make it work.
Hell, can you imagine that? Just all thick, like proper
deep fried peanut
yeah,
butter in it.
There you go. Elvis blood makes you feel like a king till your heart calcifies and you die. So anyway, yeah. So look, man, AIDS was fucking scary as a kid. Like it was, nobody knew what it was. Literally, I am being deadly serious. If you grew up in the 80s, like you'll know what I'm talking about. If you were a UK kid in the 80s, it was on the news all the time. There was like two big stories that kind of dominated the 80s. The emergence of crack cocaine being a super addictive drug that one hit of the pipe and you were addicted, and the next thing you knew, you were a toothless serial murderer, you know. That's literally how they presented it. I'm not exaggerating. And then the other thing was AIDS, and AIDS was going to kill us all and fucking just put your dick away, basically. It's over. Like, you can't have sex ever again. Like, so look, I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you this fucking advert, right? That they put this on telly. I've linked to it. Just 3, 2, 1. This shit. John Hurt, one of my favorite fucking actors, right? Did the voiceover for this, mate. And imagine just imagine seeing this as a kid. All the news is just telling you, yep, AIDS, new super disease. Nobody knows where it's come from, whether it can kill you. Is it airborne?
Sources say man fucked monkey.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's been bucking a monkey. You've got monkey bucking AIDS. Like, it's completely unreasonable. But like, just play this, mate. It fucking. I used to go out of the room as a kid when this advert was on.
3, 2, 1, go.
There is now a danger that has become a threat to us all. It is a deadly disease and there is no known cure. The virus can be passed during sexual intercourse with an infected person. Anyone can get it, man or woman. So far, it's been confined to small groups. But it's spreading. So protect yourself. And read this leaflet when it arrives. If you ignore AIDS, it could be the death of you. So don't die of ignorance.
Don't die of ignorance.
AIDS.
Don't die of ignorance, Sam. And they put that fucking leaflet like it was paid for by the government. That leaflet was like, you know, you wake up, go check the mail, Richard. All right, ma'am, run down the stairs. Hey, it's here. It was everywhere. It's unreal. That was literally, do you know what I mean? It starts with a volcano, and you're like, what's that about? And then it's rocks, and they're chiseling away a giant tombstone with the word AIDS on it. And there's this implication, like, because of the voiceover and the things it's saying, that tombstone is for all humanity. Like,
yeah,
we are fucked. Yeah, we are fucked.
Shouldn't that be a good thing if AIDS just died? You're supposed to put their name on the tombstone. Shouldn't they just say humanity? Yeah,
they should have had you in a room, like.
Yeah, I could have put.
They should have had you in the AIDS focus group room. Right? But like, seriously, like. It's madness, isn't it? Like, how fucking terrifying that was for what was actually and still remains a pretty difficult. Like, I know it sounds mad to say this, it is quite hard to get, right? I'm just like, in the grand scheme of things, just saying that's scientifically backed up. That's not a wild thing to say. Like, obviously, don't do all the crazy shit to get it, but you know, you're not always guaranteed to get AIDS if you have sex with someone with AIDS. So, just saying, they made it sound like it was like just literally out there, getting everyone in the night. Yeah,
it's like the Grim Reaper coming in your house.
You'd fucking, you'd walk down, you'd be walking down the street, and some cunt just leans out, and that's it. You just
spit AIDS on your lips, and then you just got it.
No, but it's reflected as well. There's some shocking comedy. Like, let me just show you this. I mean, again, horrific homophobic stuff. I want to find this for you.
Some good Eddie Murphy shit, if you want to call that, mate. Some old delirious clips.
Yeah, well, I in fact, I don't want to play it, but you remember the bit I'm talking about, right? How he said he didn't like it when his women were friends with gays
because they get AIDS on their lips.
Yeah, that's what he said. He's coming home with that AIDS on their lips. This is the level of ignorance that was going around in the 80s. Everyone was fucking terrified. Just think of that phrase, AIDS on their lips. No one ever in history.
Got a little AIDS on your lip over there, boy.
Yeah, no one in the history of the world ever has had AIDS on their lips. It's wild as fuck. It's mental, isn't it? No, but this is why, again, think about the big splash that it made when Diana, Princess Diana, shook hands in a hospital with an AIDS patient in 1987. She went to an AIDS clinic. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people, always talk about what she did in terms of public life. And certainly, I do not buy into the myth of Princess Diana and that, this movement springs up every 5 years where people say she should be canonized and made a saint.
Yeah, I don't get the obsession with Diana either, but did I miss a fucking meeting? Why? Like, I understand, like, in general, from what I've heard, everyone loved her. Why? Because she was just kind of nice, like.
Yeah.
Alright, fucking, I'm pretty nice as well. Where's my fucking crown? Why did she get to live the dream?
Well, I mean, she did have sex with a lot of rugby players, so does that. No, I don't know, mate. I mean, look, she weren't a bad person. She didn't really like royal life all that much.
She was nice.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, she was all right. She was sound. She was out there. And, she died in tragic circumstances. That's the other thing. See, you haven't done that yet, Sam. You haven't died in tragic circumstances.
I'm sure you will. Long left, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
When I go full Ralphie May and my heart conks out.
Yeah, he still had the syringe hanging out of his arm. That's what still smiling.
Until the end.
Yeah, still smiling he was. In fact, you remind me of, you seen an episode of Futurama, the Tales of Interest one, where Bender becomes human?
Yeah.
And he just goes mad, and then they present him. He's just a huge mess, and he's dead. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to be like, behold, the world's first true party animal.
Just Belushi as soon as I roll out.
Belushi to the max, right? But anyway, if you bring this photo up, this is like quite an iconic photograph. And the clue is in the title of the photograph. This is Princess Diana shaking hands with an AIDS patient in 1991. And look at it, without gloves. Without gloves, you see. Without gloves.
You can't catch AIDS through the skin.
Yeah, no, but people didn't want to touch them. People didn't want to touch people with AIDS. It's mad, isn't it? Like, just imagine the madness of that. Like, it's a clearly non-contagious disease in that sense. I mean. You can't get it from skin-on-skin contact, can you?
Yeah, is it because of stigma, or is it because of people generally thought you could catch it if you touched them?
No, but I mean, by this point, AIDS was such a taboo, and it was associated with like some, everything that like decent society rejected. First it was the bloody gays only the fucking gays get AIDS. Right, it started out like that, right? Then it was, you got to be a bloody fucking drug user who uses drugs with AIDS, right, in it to get AIDS.
Can I have my drugs with no AIDS this time, but that fucked my life up.
If you gotta spike it, like, just fucking don't put the AIDS in.
I'll take baking soda rather than the AIDS.
And then it was bloody drug users who hang around with the gays, having sex, unprotected, just sticking it out there, bloody bisexual. It was always. They tried to make it associated with whatever fringe group, Christian conservatives, decent society, whatever you want to call it. They always tried to associate it with whatever fucking fringe group, bloody immigrants with AIDS. Yeah, you know what I mean? It was never, anyone can get AIDS actually, mate. But you can actually protect yourself and insulate yourself.
I remember a period where, like, didn't people, like, blame gays for AIDS? That was, like, the big thing. They just shifted the blame as if, like, they were causing the AIDS.
Oh, yeah, it's wild. Like, it's wild. So, anyway, the reason I'm telling you all about AIDS, right, and we're talking about AIDS, is because I want you to, there was this piece of legislation that was passed in California, and it was signed into law by Governor Jerry Brown. And I'm horrified by it. I'm horrified as somebody that grew up with having seen what AIDS did to people, how many celebrities had their lives cut short because of AIDS, legendary singers, legendary actors, how many people died in really appalling conditions because we didn't know how to treat it. And they were basically pushed into like wards kept away from people. Once you got AIDS, you weren't in a hospital near anybody else. They didn't know what was going on. Even the medical profession just put you into a hospice. It was like being a leper. They didn't want, oh God, the AIDS. Nurses came in like fucking hazmat suits. There was no human contact in your last moments. It was really awful. Really awful. And again, if you talk to, homosexual men that lost partners to AIDS, I believe that happened to George Michael, I think, lost a partner to AIDS in the 80s, which of course it was all hushed up because it was bad for business if he came out as gay. Again, just even like going in and visiting them, they saw how they were treated in the hospitals, and it's just awful. Now, AIDS isn't a great way to die. It's not very nice, and sure, we've made great treatment, great advances scientifically, but it still is really awful how your body just can't heal itself, and your T cells and immunity drop to a point where you get a very small minor ailment and it kills you, and it comes with a bunch of other complications. The body basically can't protect itself, eventually turns on itself, and you die in really awful conditions. It's truly frightening and horrible to think that this would happen to anybody. So there was a big case in the UK. In fact, no, I will get to that in a second. This law now, this bill that has been signed by Governor Jerry Brown in California, now says it is no longer illegal to knowingly infect somebody with the AIDS virus. So if you have AIDS and you decide out of spite, malice, whatever your sick, depraved motivations are, you decide you want to infect somebody and you misrepresent your sexual health so they engage in consensual, unprotected sex with you, then that's fine. That's no longer a crime. And I think that's awful. And I'm going to tell you why I think that's awful. So first of all, there's the write-up. You can bring this up. This is the write-up in LA Times. But there was been several cases in the UK where women were deliberately infected with AIDS by malicious partners or whatever. And it took years of legal wrangling to get justice for these women. I'll direct you to one. This is way back when. This is like 2003 report in The Guardian. This was one of the first cases I can think of where a guy who lived in Surrey got AIDS in 96, but basically tricked two women, not just one, into having unprotected sex with him, telling them they were fine. And he did it because he was so pissed off about his own situation that he decided to deliberately infect two other people. And also as well, I mean, first of all, because he was religious and he was from Africa originally, and they got all these like fucked up ideas because of Christianity. Thanks everyone for that. He said that only gays could get it. Therefore, he must have been cursed by God. So any of his actions were already moot. He was already going to hell. Now, these women went through quite a long, horrible shaming process. You can imagine what it's like, for you got to go into court and you've got AIDS and you've been told your prognosis isn't good and you're probably going to die within 10 years because of the disease you've been given by this guy and blah blah blah. This was the first successful prosecution in England or Wales. There was a guy in Scotland prior to this. So it's a landmark case, and a jury took 3 hours, like less than. They were just like, this is fucking grotesque. This can't be allowed to happen. We cannot allow people who carry diseases to go on and knowingly infect people with that disease. It seems completely reasonable to me. It's a completely reasonable standpoint. This has got nothing to do with morality or I'm on the right and liberalism or any of this nonsense. It's a fucking deadly disease, and it's sad you've been affected by it. But if you knowingly give it to somebody else out of spite or malice, you've caused them bodily harm. You've got to be punished for that. And this individual was given 5 years jail for each person he did it to, a total of 10 years to be served. I think actually they did have them served concurrently, so I think he was meant to serve the full thing. Only a maximum of 5. So that seems reasonable to me. But they've passed this bill. And off the back of that, in Britain, it was just now taken as a given in law that if you deliberately infect somebody with HIV, be you man or woman, there's been multiple cases in the British justice system and in Europe as well, you go to fucking jail. You go to jail. There was a guy in Rome. He infected 29 women deliberately with AIDS, knowing he had AIDS. And he did that in over a 3-year period. He ruined 29 lives. Imagine being one of the people that individual had sex with, and you're hearing about this court case. Just imagine it. And that individual said it was just a bit of fun. He thought it was like a game of Russian roulette. His defense lawyer said, my client isn't a monster. He's just a guy with no emotional or sentimental education.
Also
that was the defense.
Someone with no emotion.
Right. So anyway, so imagine my surprise when I see this legislation passed in California, and I'm like, what possible justification can there be? What possible justification can there be for saying people who knowingly infect other people with AIDS shouldn't be prosecuted? And when we covered this story on I Hate It Here when it was first brought up, I think or it might have been on a Richard Lewis show when this legislation was first brought up. I had no idea it would ever pass. Well, it's here now. It's done. It's gone through. And the authors of the bill, including the Senator Scott Wiener, who was the first guy who proposed it, said, today, California took a major step toward treating HIV as a public health issue instead of treating people living with HIV as criminals. HIV should be treated like all other serious infectious diseases, and that's what this bill, SB 239, does. That's what it achieves. Now, nobody wants to criminalize people for having AIDS, right? We don't want to do that. There was all these, they couldn't give a reason. They couldn't give a reason as to why this was a good thing. Like, all the reasons are super wishy-washy. Like, one reason was entered saying if you were a sex worker and you solicited somebody to pay you for sex and you had AIDS and you hadn't come out about it and you had unprotected sex with that person and they gave you money and you affected them, they were like, even by soliciting them, you are committing a criminal act. Well, good.
Yeah, you are, yeah. You're also committing a criminal act by soliciting them anyway, because prostitution isn't legal in California, is it?
So this is bonkers. It's so wild. And the other reason they argued, right? And see if you can get your head around this, saying that by having a law where if you deliberately infect someone with HIV, keep in mind, it's all about deliberate infection.
Yeah,
nobody's saying
you didn't know.
Yeah, nobody's saying if you didn't know you had AIDS and you infect somebody with AIDS, you should go to jail. That's never been the case. That's never been prosecutable under law. That's why you've never heard about it, right? Because that would be a fucking outrage. I think we can all agree with that. But if someone knowingly does it and it's provable that they knew about their condition and still had unprotected sex with people anyway and maliciously infected someone with an HIV virus, yes, that should carry some sort of penalty. Well, the other argument they put forward was people don't get tested for HIV because if they don't get tested, then you can't prove in court that they knew if they do infect somebody. That's literally what Scott Wiener said. So he said, actually, the current law leads to further HIV infections. Can you even Am I fucking going nuts here?
Nah, but well, California is, and so is Mr. Brown.
So yeah. So the argument about sex workers who we all know they have it rough. No one's saying different. Especially if you've got AIDS. Christ, like if you've already turned to sex work and you end up infected with HIV, it's a tough whole life. And there should be outreach and there should be a removal of any stigma so people can get well and get better and stop the spread of a disease. Obviously, but again. You can't just go fucking people if you know you have AIDS. Like unprotected, you can't do that. You're taking a risk with their life that they're not cognizant of. That's not fucking fair. If a bus driver gets on a school bus and he's been drinking all day and thinks, nah, it'll be all right, you wouldn't then say to the fucking kids, you did get on the bus though.
Yeah, if a doctor catches a disease working in a hospital and know he has it, it's like, I'll just keep doing surgeries. Doesn't matter if I cough on their insides, I'm sure they'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, there's been numerous instances where if like a dentist has AIDS and keeps it secret, that's a problem for obvious.
Why?
For obvious reasons.
How can he transmit it to you? Doesn't he usually wear gloves?
Yeah, I'm wearing gloves. I am holding your tooth. I'm scraping away with that pricky thing they used to scrape away plaque.
Okay.
I prick my finger. Blood goes into your mouth and into an open wound in your mouth.
GG.
Blood-to-blood transmission, entirely possible. So yeah, you gotta disclose these things.
Yeah, wear some iron greaves or something, some medieval shit.
Yeah, why not? Right?
Yeah, go on. Put your greaves on and then do my teeth. I'll be all right.
So, there's reasons why we put these things in place. It's not because we fucking dislike people with AIDS. I think I've ably demonstrated that we fucking moved on. It's because AIDS is still a fatal illness. In 50 years, maybe AIDS will be just like a common cold. Caught the AIDS, drop some fucking tablets, and it's all good. A couple of days in bed, and we're all happy. But this, to me, is just such a betrayal of the general public's health and safety and security. I'm absolutely appalled that this is the case. And I'm as sensitive as the next person to somebody suffering with it. But you can't just fucking say, yeah, AIDS, like, go and give it to people, and it's not even a fucking misdemeanor. It's wild. So crazy. And the good news I will say is that even though it passed in California and people were celebrating it as a win for some reason, most other states seem to be like, nah.
Who is that a win for? Like, that's not even a win for people with AIDS, surely.
Well, I don't think so either.
Because that means more
apparently
people
it
are
is,
going to have
mate.
AIDS.
Apparently it is. But there you go. So it's all gone mad. Right, we'll end with something a bit more upbeat. Did you see what happened on the Sunday night football? Obviously, we've been loving the NFL. My season's over because Derek Carr is wrecked
I'm top of my
immediately
fantasy
again.
league, mate, in G50, wrecking everyone.
Who's putting up the points for you? Who's your big hitter?
Antonio Brown's gone big.
Of course it is, mate.
Who else have I got? Fucking Adrian Peterson's gone huge as well.
He's done all right, actually. It's mad to think that for about 3 years he was like the best running back in the fucking league, and now he's like washed up to fuck. But yeah, he's having a mild resurgence. Anyway, I love a bit of NFL. So last night it was the Giants. Sunday it was the Giants versus Denver Broncos, and this NBC. A legendary commentator called Al Michaels, he's been in the business for a long, long time. He's made a fucking inappropriate joke.
Made a whoopsies.
Yeah, mate, it's a big old whoopsies, though. Because he was talking about the New York Giants. Now, they were like 0-5, and they've looked fucking terrible. And they, spoiler, if you don't have NFL Game Pass and you like to watch the VODs, but yeah, spoiler just in case, they fucking... beat the fucking Broncos to get a first win. Big surprise result. But anyway, when they were talking about it in the third quarter that it looked like the Giants were going to win, Al Michaels said, I mean, let's face it, the Giants are coming off a worse week than Harvey Weinstein.
The thing is, right, just on a pure comedy basis, it's not bad, is it?
No, here's the thing.
But at the same time, if you're if you're walking on ice, you got to be ready for it to crack as well.
Yeah, true. But here's the thing, you see. Immediately on a comedic level, it works, right? You go, yeah, Harvey Weinstein. Oh, wait a minute. But if you think about it, Harvey Weinstein didn't have a bad week.
Yeah,
He's had a pretty good week considering what he fucking did. Yeah. All of those women he fucking molested and raped, they had a bad week, you see. And inherent into the joke is an almost tacit implication that what is happening to Harvey Weinstein is unfortunate, rather than actual.
See, I just didn't think that too. I didn't go that deep. I just took it on face value.
But this is what I mean, you see, as a man who thinks about comedy, right, and understands the nature of a joke. I understand why that would give you a laugh on the surface, right? I understand why it seems amusing, but I can also understand why that would be grotesquely offensive to people, which, obviously we know, like, look, being offended, fuck it. But look, he didn't lose his job. It's not ended a career. He did come out and apologize. And I think the fact he's 72 or whatever. Oh, no, he's 72.
He's probably just trying to fill some space. Like, he's probably just trying to fill a little bit of air. And he just said the wrong thing. And he's like, fuck my life.
Yeah, you know how it is. You know how it is, mate. You know.
Yeah, did you see the James Corden one, though? I thought that one was a lot weirder.
Mate, James Corden is shit, though.
Yeah, I know, but...
Like, I want this on the records. Fuck James Corden. Like, don't get me wrong. It's good in a way because I should look up to him in a way because he's a British person who's fat and he got on American TV. And in that sense, we've walked a similar path, haven't we? Yeah, we've walked a similar path. But on the flip side, he's an unfunny, talentless piece of shit. So
exactly. But usually he's good at riding the... Like, he usually doesn't say anything bad. And then he just came out of nowhere with the Harvey Weinstein joke. And it was like... hang on, I'm going to have to find it now. I can't remember what the exact joke was. James Corden Weinstein. There he is.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just got told I did get it wrong. It's still a misdemeanor, the AIDS thing. Sorry. It is a misdemeanor. I always trip up because we don't have felonies or misdemeanors in Britain. So there you go. My bad. Corrected. So what do you got here?
I think I've just got the link to the video of him saying it. I think there we go. Right, I'll give you the link.
Because I did see it, and it was pretty cringeworthy. I mean, it's always
here in LA. It's so
gets up and tells some jokes. So let's have a look. Yeah, I'll free you on this with you. Yeah,
3, 2, 1, go.
right here in LA. It's so beautiful. Harvey Weinstein has already asked tonight up to his hotel to give him a massage.
Read the room.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that groan was that you like that joke or you don't like that joke. If you don't like that joke, you should probably leave now. It has been weird this week though, hasn't it? Watching Harvey Weinstein in hot water. Ask any of the women who watched him take a bath. It's weird watching Harvey Weinstein in hot water. Harvey Weinstein wanted to come tonight, but he'll settle for whatever potted plant is closest.
Yeah, not gonna lie, his delivery's fucking garbage for starters, isn't it? Like
the potted plant was the only one with an actual joke.
Yeah, but it's pretty bad, mate. Like when you explain the joke, right, and when you say as well, if people drop in the whole, if you don't like that one, you better leave now. What you have to then do is you have to then sort of move on to something else to fight. You then just don't go straight back into your Harvey Weinstein. Yeah. I've got all. And like the punchline to every joke was like, there, it's been weird seeing Harvey Weinstein in hot water. Just ask any of the women who he asked to watch him have a bath. It's weird. And then he explains it. Like, just leave it there. Just leave it settle. I could give this cunt lessons. Like that's the punchline. Just leave it settle. Just let it percolate in people's brains. Just ask any of the women who watched Harvey Weinstein. You know, you just leave it there. Harvey Weinstein has to watch him have a bath, and then you move on to the next one about potted plants. You know, Steve Colbert did a better one with where he talked about how he masturbated into a potted plant. He said, "If you ever go to Harvey Weinstein's for dinner, avoid the fresh basil." Yeah? That's pretty fucking good, right? You know, short, simple, to the point, but like
and doesn't explain the punchline to you.
Yeah, because I don't need it
because you wanked implants, so the basil will be covered in jet.
Yeah, there's jizz or there's jet all over the basil, of course, right? So, that's a better joke. That's a better bit. So yeah. But fuck him, fuck James Corden. Do you remember when he went through like just years of I'm fat me and I love it.
Yeah.
Like he just do that for like 5 years.
Yeah, he did go a bit Johnny Vegas.
Yeah, but Johnny Vegas was good. Johnny Vegas was at least drinking himself to
that's
death.
what I mean.
At
least he went, if you're gonna walk on ice, might as well dance. He's just fucking downing Guinness on TV, Foster's to the brain.
So
just kept the full accent as well. I always like that. I never toned that shit down.
So there you go. So I'm just saying, if you're famous, you're on TV, you're a sports commentator, much like my friend Tea Time knows, maybe leave the edgy jokes out. Just leave the edgy jokes out a bit. And that's some good advice for you, Sam. You see, and we've gone full circle because once again, Richard Lewis is a genius of form and structure, and we brought everything full circle. Have you noticed how I've deliberately done that? People don't even pick up on this. I'm like the Stuart Lee of podcasts, right? Because what we did is, what did we start with? Stand-up comedy and you becoming a caster, and we've ended with a sports caster and stand-up comedy. Segue into this bit about how you should watch yourself, don't make a crazy joke, and then we end the fucking show. And I've literally done that on the fucking fly. That wasn't even written down. I just started to see all the interweaving bits. I'm just fucking, I just see it, me.
All right, Rain Man.
So anyway, yeah, exactly. I get Rick and Morty.
Yeah, you've actually got 200 IQ to do a podcast.
Rick.
I want myself.
So there you go. Anyway, what a boy. Time to wrap up the show. Anything to add, Sam?
I'll be casting soon, so watch me shit the bed.
Yep.
There you go.
I'm sure you will. We'll keep you posted about that. Congrats to the people who won the T-shirts. Make sure you get in touch with Sammy. We'll give you the requisite choices and the hookup. Yeah, exactly right. Thanks to everybody who obviously subscribed and donated and viewed. We had like 700 and fuck knows how many people at one point. That's good viewing numbers for just talking about serious things. And there's a good chance we'll be back tomorrow, quite possibly. Also, as well, we are looking to do some more silver casts. I've had a few silver players reach out to me, so I'll probably do one of them through the week. And then, of course, obviously on Tuesday we'll be back with. Is that tomorrow? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Tomorrow we'll also be back with By the Numbers again. So we're all up to our quarter and back on schedule. So lots of content coming this week. Thanks to everybody for supporting it. Until I see you next, take care.